The story of Carlos at 57 years old knew well the weight of choices. Sitting on the porch of his simple home in a small countryside town, he watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. A gentle breeze swayed the leaves of the mango tree in his backyard, and in his hands rested a worn-out Bible, open to Psalm 1:1. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the path of sinners, nor sit in the seat of mockers. Words he had read countless times now seemed to pulse with new meaning. They made him look back on the paths he had walked and forward to the ones he still wanted to follow. Carlos's life had not been easy. Born into a humble family, he grew up in a neighborhood where opportunities were few and temptations were many. In his 20s, he let himself be drawn in by friends who promised easy money and adventure. Just this once, he would tell himself, as he got involved in shady deals with friends who mocked anyone living a serious, honest life. But what seemed like freedom soon became chains. The party nights ended in regret, and the money, which came quickly, vanished even faster. At 30, Carlos met Ana, a woman of firm faith and a kind heart. She worked as a seamstress and attended a small church in the neighborhood. Ana saw something in Carlos that he himself couldn't see, a man capable of change, capable of choosing a different path. "You don't have to live like this, Carlos. God has more for you," she would say, her gaze a mixture of firmness and affection. It was Ana who brought him to church for the first time, where he heard Psalm 1 and felt the words like a mirror reflecting his own life. But change was not simple. Carlos tried, failed, and tried again. There were moments when he returned to his old habits, drawn by the counsel of the wicked and promises of shortcuts that led nowhere. The seat of mockers was comfortable because it demanded nothing from him. Yet every return to that path left him emptier. The counsel of the wicked. At 45, Carlos faced a crisis that changed everything. He and Ana, now married with 2 teenage children, were going through financial hardship. The mechanic shop where Carlos worked went bankrupt, and he was left unemployed. An old friend, Roberto, showed up with a tempting offer. "Carlos, you fix cars better than anyone. Work with me. We can make good money with used parts. No receipts. You know how it is." The offer was tempting. Bills were piling up, and his kids needed clothes and school supplies. But something inside Carlos hesitated. That night he couldn't sleep. Sitting in the living room holding Ana's Bible, he read Psalm 1:1 again. "Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked." Roberto's offer was exactly that, a shortcut that promised relief, but at what cost? Carlos remembered how, years before, choices like this cost him Ana's trust and his own peace. He closed his eyes and prayed, something he still wasn't very used to doing. "God, show me the right path. I don't want to go back." The next day, Carlos turned down Roberto's offer. It wasn't easy. Roberto laughed, calling him naive and saying he would never get out of debt. The seat of mockers was right there, mocking his decision. But for the first time, Carlos felt a strange peace, as if he had taken a firm step onto new ground, the path of sinners. Without a job, Carlos started doing small repairs in his garage at home. He placed flyers in mailboxes around the neighborhood, offering honest mechanic services. The beginning was slow, but gradually the neighbors started calling. Mrs. Maria needed a carburetor adjusted. Mr. João needed an oil change. Each satisfied customer recommended another, and Carlos's reputation began to grow. Still, there were days when doubt crept back in. He saw his old friends driving new cars and living in big houses, fruits of the choices he now avoided. Did I really make the right choice? He wondered as he worked under the hot sun fixing an engine. The path of sinners, as the psalm describes, seemed so much easier, but then he would remember Ana, who prayed for him every morning, and his children, who looked at him with pride when he came home with greasy hands but a clean heart. One afternoon, while working, Carlos was visited by a retired pastor, Mr. Antonio, 62 years old. Antonio was a loyal customer and enjoyed chatting over a cup of fresh coffee. "Carlos, have you ever thought about what it really means to be blessed?" he asked, pointing to the Bible on the workbench. Carlos shrugged. "I guess it means being happy, right?" Antonio smiled. "It's more than that. It's living with God's peace, knowing you are walking in His ways. You could have chosen the easy path, but you chose the right one. That's what it means to be blessed." The seat of mockers. Over time, Carlos's work prospered. He opened a small shop in the neighborhood with a simple sign, Honesty Auto Repair. The name made some people laugh, but it attracted customers who valued his integrity. Carlos also began to get more involved in church, helping organize volunteer efforts for families in need. He discovered that by leaving the seat of mockers, those who mocked faith, honesty, and hard work, he found a new circle, people who, like him, were striving to live with purpose. One of these people was Mrs. Lucia, a 55-year-old widow who attended the prayer group. Lucia had lost her eldest son to the streets years earlier and carried a pain that only those who have experienced it can truly understand. She and Carlos became friends, sharing stories of stumbles and victories. "You know, Carlos," Lucia once said, "when I read Psalm 1, I think of my son. He followed the wrong advice and it broke my heart. But you give me hope. You show me that we can still choose differently, even after messing up." Lucia's words touched Carlos deeply. He realized that his journey wasn't just about himself, but about inspiring others. At 57, he didn't have wealth, but he had something far more valuable, the peace of knowing he was walking in God's path. The meaning of Psalm 1:1 is like a signpost at the start of a road. It presents us with two paths, the path of the blessed and the path of the wicked. Being blessed doesn't mean having a life without problems, but rather living in harmony with God, with a deep joy that comes from doing what is right. The psalmist warns us of three traps that can lead us away from this path. Walking in the counsel of the wicked. These are the voices that tempt us with shortcuts, with promises of success at any cost. For Carlos, it was Roberto's offer of easy money, but with a high price. For us, it might be the pressure to do what everyone does, telling small lies at work, ignoring truth for convenience, or chasing pleasure over purpose. Standing in the path of sinners. This is not just about making a mistake, but turning that mistake into a way of life. It's when we get comfortable with choices that pull us away from God, as Carlos almost did in his youth. This path may seem wide and comfortable, but it leads to an emptiness that no amount of money or success can fill. Sitting in the seat of mockers, this is the final stage, where we not only follow the wrong, but begin to mock what is right. It's the cynical attitude that ridicules faith, honesty, and goodness. Carlos knew this crowd in his youth, but learned that they only offer empty laughter. For anyone reading this, Psalm 1 is both an invitation and a comfort. At this stage in life, many of us look back and see choices we wish we could change. Maybe we followed the wrong advice, walked down harmful paths, or sat with those who dragged us down. But Psalm 1 reminds us, it is never too late to choose the path of the blessed. Like Carlos, we can get up, dust ourselves off, and move forward with God. A reflection for the heart. If you, dear reader, feel the weight of past choices, know that God does not define you by your mistakes, but by who you can become in Him. Psalm 1:1 is a gentle call to look around and ask, whose advice am I following? What paths am I walking? Who am I sitting with? It's not about perfection, it's about direction. Carlos found his blessing not in riches, but in the peace of an honest life, in the company of people who lifted him up, and in the certainty that God was guiding him. And what about you? Perhaps you are facing a crossroads as Carlos once did. Maybe you feel the lure of a shortcut, or the echo of voices that mock your faith. But listen to the gentle voice of God that says, choose my path and you will be blessed. May you, like Carlos, find the courage to say no to wicked counsel, to step off the path of sinners, and to rise from the seat of mockers. And as you do, may you discover the deep joy of living for God, a joy that doesn't depend on circumstances, but on His presence. May your path be blessed today and always.